Welcome back to the Tundra. He's John Kuhn. I'm Matt Schneidman. Episode 20, the Packers postmortem. The season is over. Before we get started, as always, throw us a subscribe on YouTube at the Tundra GB, on Instagram, on X at the Tundra GB. We would appreciate your follow and all your views. Thank you for helping us get the show off the ground in season one. And as always, it's a year-long show, so we're not going anywhere. Lot to dissect after the Packers season ended a couple days ago as we record this around 8:30 p.m. Monday night on January 12th. But what everyone wants to talk about right now, John, and as of now, there is no resolution on Matt LaFleur's future. Where we stand right now is there are a couple national reports out there that the Packers and LaFleur both want to get something done, but that talks will happen or already have started to happen between LaFleur and his camp and the Packers and first-year team president Ed Policy. So let's go through the scenarios of what could happen from these talks. If you'd like to maybe run through kind of what you have in your head as you envision the next steps for the leadership of the Green Bay Packers.
Well, I believe the future of what this team is being discussed currently, whether it's staff under Matt LaFleur, whether it's Matt LaFleur's extension and how many years that could possibly be or potentially be, and the way they want this team to look. Some of the things that went wrong this year with game management, with penalties, with other things, with injuries, and how they can prevent against all of that, and the all-encompassing, which is we got to find a way to get ourselves out of the 7 seed into a home playoff game and into a playoff run that could potentially lead to a Super Bowl berth, because this roster, when healthy, is good enough for that.
Yeah, look, I think when the reports are out there, as Ian Rappaport put one out on Saturday, Schefter kind of reiterated that this morning, that the Packers are interested in extending LaFleur. I just want to give the people an idea of the couple of things that could happen from these reports. They could reach an extension, and Matt LaFleur could stay the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. I don't know what's going to happen right now, just for full transparency. I texted LaFleur tonight and invited him to come on. It was kind of sarcastic. I literally said to him,
well, don't be sarcastic. Be serious. Maybe he'll take you more serious if you actually sound serious.
He takes me serious right now. I said, is anything going to happen tonight? John and I are recording. Not that you care, but you have a free invitation to come on the show and tell us exactly the dollar amounts each side is at right now. He did not respond to my text. So I'm trying. I put in effort. Here's what could happen. They could find a resolution. They could reach an extension. They could be far apart on dollar signs. I don't know what those dollar signs are right now. And they could agree to a mutual parting of ways. It seems, based on reports, it would not be a straight up firing right now. Could it be a situation where they're far apart and Ed Policy says, you know what, let's look to maybe trade him to another team if we know it's not going to work out here? Or, John, just playing devil's advocate here, could it be something where the Packers, quote unquote, want to extend him, but they're offering him something that they know he's probably not going to accept? So it's technically a firing, but it'll make them look better in the public eye by them saying they wanted to get something done. I'm not saying what I believe. I'm not saying what I know, because obviously we don't know exactly what's going on right now, or at least I don't. I'm just laying out the possibilities for everybody. But what we do know is that the future of the Green Bay Packers head coach at this moment at 8:39 p.m. Central Time on Monday, January 12th, is still undecided.
Yeah, I would say this. All of those options are on the table. I doubt it's any of them other than what it was reported to be, that they are actually just talking about what type of extension they would like to do from both sides, and they have started negotiations. Although that just feels so weird that would be what was reported. Who would leak that and why? Quite frankly, I can tell you exactly what a contract should look like for a coach if you want him to be extended. And that's what makes it, when you do the sniff test on this, it feels like there's something else in the air. And I personally think that something else is trying to address some of the things that went wrong with this team. Some of the things that have been wrong the entirety of Matt LaFleur's tenure here in Green Bay? Why do the special teams keep having issues? We paid Rich Bisaccia more money than we've ever paid a special teams coordinator. In fact, we paid him more than any special teams coordinator in the NFL. Why are we still having issues with special teams?
Is that confirmed that he's the highest paid special teams coordinator?
No, I don't know if it's confirmed. I would have to have a source, and you're the one who does the sources.
We know you don't do sources. You do informed speculation, John Kuhn. I do sources.
It's $2 million a year, is it not? Is that what Rich Bisaccia is making?
You tell me. You're in the
Well,
building.
that's what I heard 3 years ago, or that's what was reported 3 years ago when he was there, the highest. Nonetheless, why do these things keep happening? Rich Bisaccia, we know, is a very good special teams coordinator. From the 20 years that he spent in National Football League, why are we still having these problems here? Why are we still having 12 men on the field? Why are we still having 10 men on the field? Why are we taking timeouts and then having delay of games after we take timeouts? Why are we having some of the problems that we continually have? I believe that's the conversations here, and I believe that's what's going to be at bay when this thing starts going into effect. And hopefully, Ed Policy feels convicted one way or another, and it's not one of those situations where it's like, I really hoped I'd know by the end of this season if I wanted to extend Matt LaFleur. But all of these injuries that we had, I could potentially still understand if Ed Policy is like, I don't know. I was supposed to find out this year, and I found out nothing because of the injuries and the exit in the wild card round as the 7th seed.
Yeah, Matt LaFleur, when he spoke with us yesterday, so Sunday afternoon at his season-ending wrap-up press conference that he has every year after their season ends, he was asked a number of questions about his future, and he deflected all of them. He did not answer any of them, respectfully declined to get into his business because he said he wanted to keep it about the players because he was feeling for them, which I understand. So he was asked everything from, why do you think you're the right guy to get this team over the hump, to would you be comfortable coaching in a contract year? He declined all that. We know that Ed Policy, from what he told local reporters over the summer, does not want either Matt LaFleur or Brian Gutekunst, who is also going into a contract year. We haven't really talked about him because I just think it's widely assumed that he's getting an extension. We know Ed Policy doesn't want either of those guys in a lame duck year. So everyone's assuming, and I think fairly so, that there's going to be a resolution reached this offseason on at least the head coach. We don't know if Matt LaFleur would be fine coaching in a contract. We don't know if Ed Policy could fall on that solution if it comes to that. If Ed Policy says to Matt LaFleur, after working through a contract, and they say, we can't reach terms, he said, let's just coach out one more year. Could LaFleur say, no, I want long-term stability, and then he would have long-term offers from a handful of other franchises for maybe more money than the Packers would offer? Could he then just quit? Like, I don't know. I think there are a number.
Well, he couldn't just quit. If he quit, the Packers would still retain his rights. So
right, I'm not. I don't mean
somewhere
quit,
else. Yeah.
Could he? What I meant by that, I didn't mean literally quit. What I mean is, could he somehow, force his way out? Say, I'm not re-signing with you after this season, or something. My point is,
yeah, potential. Those are really. I don't envision any of.
It's an extreme. I understand that. I'm just saying it. I say that to say it seems there are a lot of options on the table, at least worth considering. So I would expect something to happen this week, because if the Packers are going to move on, then they need to get going on a coaching search. And if they're not, then they can take as long as they want. But if they expect to reach a resolution and know they're going to, then I would expect that to happen in the next couple of days. Who knows? Things can kind of go a number of different ways here. What I do think is notable, though, is the staunch support Matt LaFleur has in that locker room. And I don't think it's just lip service from some players, John. You're on the sideline. You're in the building. Before I read some of the quotes from players at Locker Cleanout today about Matt LaFleur, what is your sense about how this locker room, how this coaching staff feels about him?
Well, I think everybody pretty much likes him, especially the players. He's known as a player's coach, and he takes pretty fantastic care of them, right? I mean, quite frankly, this team is afforded the benefit of rest days, of kind of objectivity where they can throw out their ideas and have it heard, right? They're kind of listened to by their head coach. He really does make it a great place for the players to play. And quite frankly, I can't imagine a single player having a problem with Matt LaFleur as a head coach. I couldn't see where that scenario would play itself out. The coaching staff, coaches are like this. If we can win football games, if we can coach and give our ideas and it's heard, then they're happy. I mean, coaches are creatures of habit where they just want to go out there and they just want to coach ball and they just want to do ball. Green Bay is an exceptional place to not only coach, but to play football because of everything that you're afforded, everything, all the benefits that come with it, and the facility, the coaching staff, and really there aren't many places that allow you to have the voice that you have like you do in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I couldn't imagine anybody having a problem with Matt LaFleur as their head coach.
And he wants to be the head coach here. He made that abundantly clear when he spoke with us yesterday. All right, a couple quotes from players, notable players at that, when asked about LaFleur after guys like Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs have unequivocally supported Matt LaFleur in recent days. These were from today on Locker Cleanout Day. Micah Parsons said he reached out to Matt LaFleur when he started seeing talk about LaFleur's job and said, "Man, when I agreed to come here, you were part of the reason why I came here. I want you a part of this, and I love you, and I think you're a great coach." Tucker Kraft, I don't think there's another coach who can come in and do it as well as he does, especially with the complexities that are in this offense. There's no doubt in my mind that he'll remain here as a Packer. I think a lot of that talk is pretty silly. Jaden Reed, I think he belongs here. I think he's a great coach. Javon Bullard, I think he does a great job with this team. I love Matt. He's our coach. He's our coach, and we wouldn't want nothing more than him to be here. Christian Watson and Xavier McKinney. I'm not going to read every quote, but Christian Watson and Xavier McKinney also threw their support behind LaFleur. I'm not asking you for the fact of the matter here, John. I'm asking you to guess. But do you think Ed Policy takes into account in these negotiations the voice of some of the leaders of that locker room when they talk about their head coach?
I would imagine so, right? I would think that to be the case. But at the same time, I think Ed Policy has an idea of what he wants to do. He has an idea of what he wants his team to look like. And we don't know if that idea is playing out by his vision or if his idea is maybe empower Brian Gutekunst to have more of a vision of this team and this staff and the way that it goes. We don't know. Ed Policy has been doing this job for about 6 months right now.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what kind of president and CEO he's going to be. But we're going to get some sort of an idea by this move and how he addresses it with Matt LaFleur. Again, they are in contract negotiations. That has been reported. Are those negotiations more dollars and cents? Or are those negotiations more about principles and identity of this football team? That's the interesting part to me.
Could it be Ed Policy says, we want you here as head coach, but only if you make sweeping changes to your staff? Who knows? I do think something notable before we get to our second segment that I thought back to on Saturday night after the game is I remember Ed Policy sitting with us over the summer in a boardroom atop Lambeau Field and saying, more than watching his dad, Carmen Policy, who used to run the 49ers, celebrate Super Bowls with champagne, the thing he took from his dad the most was watching him struggle through tough times. And the toughest thing he saw his dad go through was trading Joe Montana in 1993. That was met with a lot of backlash from 49ers fans. And Ed said, he was a kid at the time, he remembers seeing his dad get hate mail, people saying stuff on the radio about him. And he said what he learned from his dad more than anything is to stand in the pocket and do what's best for the organization you run, no matter what other people think. So Ed Policy, as he comes into this job, he knows his objective and his mantra is do what's best for the Green Bay Packers, no matter what people think. I still think he values what the players in the locker room say. I think that'll be part of the equation. But he's got to make the best decision for the Green Bay Packers, and we're going to find out here pretty soon. And heck, by the time you're listening to this, he may have already made a decision. That's the beauty of not doing a live podcast. But We will know here soon what that decision is. And that's obviously the main story going on with the Green Bay Packers. But there's so much more going on, and we're going to get to that in our next segment, breaking down the game, what went wrong for the Packers, a couple notable rehab and injury updates from Locker Cleanout Day today from some really notable players. We'll get to all that and much more. You're listening to The Tundra. Hey guys, Matt Schneidman here from The Tundra podcast. With the holiday season here, it means that we in the Wisconsin area can expect some nasty snowstorms, which means icy roads. I know for myself that if I ever find myself in a situation where I got injured because another driver lost control of their car, my first call is to nobody else other than Nicolet Law. They're ready to help and will be there when I need them. So if you've been injured, you shouldn't be expected to manage your claim on top of everything else. Call 1-855-NICOLET. That's 1-855-NICOLET, or go to nicoletlaw.com. Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 20, presented by Nicolet Law. Okay, Packer fans, if you're still with us to dissect this Packers-Bears game and dive into a little bit, I think you just like torturing yourself because, man, if I were a fan of this team, that would be tape I do not want to go back and look at. Up 21-3 at halftime. Lose the game 31-27. Give up 25 points in the fourth quarter. Offense goes stagnant in the second half and scores only 6 points. John Kuhn, where do we start with this one? There are so many things that went wrong. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, then Denver, then Chicago part 1, then Baltimore. It gets much worse, much, much worse, John Kuhn.
Well, let's start with this. The offense was exceptional in the first half. Absolutely exceptional. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Exacting the woes that was Chicago game 2, where they couldn't score touchdowns in the red zone. They just kept scoring touchdowns in the red zone, worked their way down with 37 seconds left to get into field goal range, made the first attempt at the field goal until the icing proceeded. Brandon McManus missing the one that actually counted right before halftime. And then that seemed to throw not just McManus, but the entire team into a funk. 3 and out by the Packers, field goal for the Bears. 3 and out by the Packers, and then a fourth down interception, which, by the way, I don't know why we're intercepting the ball on fourth downs, but that's neither here nor there. Just another thing that I kind of think is weird by this Green Bay
I think
Packers
that
team.
is here and there.
21-9 going into the fourth quarter before all of a sudden an explosion by the Chicago Bears. It was crazy. It was absolutely nuts what we saw take place. And I would like to blame it on the offense, but then the defense was terrible in the fourth quarter. But the offense didn't move the ball at all for the first 4 drives of the second half. So it was a collapse of epic proportion. And let's not forget the special teams here, which everybody knows about in the history of Matt LaFleur. The special teams will find their way to ask everybody to hold their beer by not just missing 2 field goals and an extra point, but allowing some kick returns to be quite impactful in the second half. So yeah, it was all 3 phases. And in 30 minutes of time, I couldn't believe that I saw as many things happen to all 3 phases as we did.
We don't need to torture fans that much, so we'll just go through the nuts and bolts of why each phase failed. And in the first half, it was all great, pretty much. I mean, you can even excuse the Brandon McManus miss from 55. It looked good, and then the wind just took it left. So you can be really pleased with what the offense did. LaFleur was brilliant in the first half with some of his play designs, getting Christian Watson to clear out guys for the Jaden Reed touchdown, where Jaden Reed kind of runs a stop route, then a double move up the sideline to get wide open, where Christian Watson runs kind of a pick play for Romeo Doubs on 4th and 1. I mean, LaFleur and the offense were brilliant in the first half. Second half, here's what it boils down to in my mind, and you correct me if I'm wrong. On offense, the offensive line was bad. It was pass protection. And those pass protection issues arose from a couple of things. Communication issues on their own. And Matt LaFleur yesterday, when he spoke with us, kind of emphasized, I thought this was interesting, the need to get home playoff games because it's loud as heck in Soldier Field when you're on offense. And the offensive line didn't pick up certain things. There were defensive back blitzes that the Bears brought that really messed up Jordan Love's rhythm and timing. They couldn't get the run game going for a number of different reasons. On defense, Quay Walker's, through 3 quarters, it wasn't even the second half. Through 3 quarters, they allowed 6 points. Fourth quarter, they allowed 25. Quay Walker said that guys were running free. Defense didn't know their assignments. They weren't on the same page. He goes, that can't happen at this stage. Communication issues, assignment issues, MAs. And then on special teams, John, we sat here last time we did this podcast and I wrote a whole feature on it for The Athletic. Basically raising the question of, is another special teams disaster going to doom the Packers? We saw one last time they were in Chicago. We saw one against the Eagles last year in the playoffs. We saw one against the 49ers a couple years ago in the divisional round. There was almost one 2 years ago against the 49ers when Keyshawn Nixon fumbled that 73-yard kickoff and Eric Wilson pounced on it. And lo and behold, it's the Packers. So of course there's going to be a special teams disaster. And it came in the form of a nightmare this time, with Brandon McManus missing a PAT and then a 44-yard field goal in the second half of the fourth quarter. And he said it was absolutely embarrassing and the worst performance or the lowest point of his career. His 12-year career, I think, is what he called it. They played complimentary football, just not the kind you want.
Yeah, it was terrible. And it still gets me to question, why are we intercepting fourth down passes? Why are we getting delay of games after timeouts? Why are we having 10 men on the football field? Why are we having 12 men on the football field, trying to get them off and then having to call a timeout because we run too many men off the football field? It's just, when things go bad here, I don't know who is the person in charge with trying to say, take a deep breath. It's going to be all right. Everybody makes a run, but now it's time to play football again. It's really bad, Matt. It's really bad. When the tide starts to turn, it's like the Green Bay Packers panic. Mm-hmm. Not just players, not just coaches, but everybody involved. That's what it feels like.
I thought it was interesting after the game, and Matt LaFleur kind of backtracked on these comments the day after the game. So I want to acknowledge that. But after the game, he said, we need to do a better job of staying composed as a football team. I'm paraphrasing. He said they got disheveled in the second half. So going along the lines of what you were saying about losing their composure in big moments, the 3 things that I think of are actually 4 things I think of. I get it's a heat of the moment play, but Carrington Valentine cost his team 27 yards by intercepting that pass.
Yeah.
And then celebrating.
It's not heated. It's not. No, let me get back to this. It's not heat of the moment. You were taught to knock the ball down on fourth down since high school. High school. Unless you're picking that thing off, unless it's a 5-yard out and you're picking it off, running it in for a touchdown, you're taught since high school. Now, I want to point something out.
There wasn't anyone near him, too.
I want to point something out. Xavier McKinney did this week 3 at Cleveland, right before half. I wonder how that was addressed. Because had that been addressed properly, the point should have gotten across to Carrington Valentine.
Was there time left when McKinney picked that off? I seem to remember there
was a very few seconds. There was very few seconds, but it was enough. It was thrown from midfield that we could have thrown a Hail Mary, or we could have potentially got. There was just. It doesn't matter the context of what happens after. You either do things the right way all the time, or you don't. The Packers don't a heck of a lot.
And Carrington Valentine's reaction, not to make too much of that, but it wasn't like after he did it, he was like, I shouldn't have done that. He celebrated like that was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. So you would hope, if you're a Packer fan, that they're teaching it that way, but are they?
Matt, when I see stuff like that, I get discombobulated because I know
can tell
what it's
you're
like.
Getting heated right now.
I know what it's like in these meetings. I know the way the coaches preach and harp on every little detail, details that matter. These games are won in the margins in the regular season. They're won on the thinnest of margins in the postseason. I cannot believe that was allowed to go. that was allowed to fly. And when he came to the sideline, somebody didn't grip him up and say, knock the ball down. We were through this in week 3. I was surprised by that.
That's the most animated I've seen you get in our 20 weeks doing this podcast. I think that should speak to
It's just that game, the game bothers me. It really does.
I don't blame you.
Specifically for many reasons. I believe our team is better than the Chicago Bears. I believe the Green Bay Packers are a better team than the Chicago Bears, but they lost to them twice this year, and they have to wear that scarlet letter. They have to wear that scarlet L for an entire year to that fan base down there because, quite frankly, the Bears earned it. They deserved it, and they beat you, but they didn't beat you because you were playing at your best. They beat you because you were doing dumb things, and that's the thing that's upsetting. And then you have some players like Jordan Love, who's out there playing a game of his life, absolutely dotting people up, throwing balls under duress all night, looking fantastic, and he's got to wear this L too? Like, that's unfortunate. That's terrible. And I hate that. I hate that for Jordan. I hate that for this team. I hate it for the coaching staff and the conversations around Matt and dropping this game. I hate it for the fan base and everybody else that has to wear this. It sucks. It sucks that the Packers let this thing go.
I'm giving you the floor. I think this is Packers therapy for fans, and I appreciate you speaking your mind. But yeah, just the discombobulation of that game. You mentioned the delay of game. They also only had 10 guys blocking the PAT on the last Bears touchdown. They had 10 guys on the field, which they also had 10 guys on the field defending Robbie Gould's game-winning field goal attempt in the 2021 divisional round. So it's not a Rich Bisaccia thing. It's an everybody thing. It's an organizational thing. And then, like you mentioned, the timeout they had to burn, the second timeout, because they subbed on 2 guys and 3 guys ran off. So they didn't have enough guys on the field. Rasheed Walker's false start from the 23-yard line. This doesn't go to discombobulation, but Jaden Reed's big drop. Who knows if he scores a touchdown? Jaden Reed said today to us that he was up till 5 a.m. thinking about that catch, and he's still thinking about it because of how much it could have cost the team. It's just like the second game that the Bears and Packers played this season, the last one at Soldier Field, just on a bigger scale. One of these things that we're talking about goes the other way, and the Packers may win that game. But guess what? Like you said, John Kuhn, you have to wear it. The Packers, for the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months, until the next time they play the Chicago Bears, and maybe even beyond that, have to live with this because this is the bed they made for themselves, and now they have to lie in it. And guess what? When Ben Johnson says on video in the locker room, fuck the Packers, and then in a press conference today says, I stand by what I said, I don't like them, and I have the backing of George McCaskey when I say that, he has earned every right to say that. And Xavier McKinney said today, Ben Johnson's a troll, but he's a hell of a coach. And sure, that might be true, but you got to tip your cap. Whatever you want to say about the handshake and how Ben Johnson approached it, you just got to eat it. The Bears earned it. The Packers lost. They collapsed, and they got to live with that.
This is what happens when you've owned a team for so long and you've won so many games against them, and then they've crawled out of that cave. They've crawled out of that hole, and now you got a big old problem you got to face. Because I'm going to tell you one thing. Caleb Williams might miss an awful lot of passes, and he might have thrown for 50% completion percentage, but that son of a bitch can throw the ball. And he can throw some balls into some places that you can't even imagine. He can do it on a run. He usually does it on a run. He can do it from the pocket, but he sometimes misses from the pocket. That guy, if he continues to progress, we are going to have a Jordan Love versus Caleb Williams, Packers versus Bears rivalry for the next decade that is going to be so good, so enticing, and so hard to live for fans because every single game is going to go down to the wire unless this team figures out a way to shore itself up in the margins. They got to be obsessive with the details. They have to understand game situations and scenarios and have it play out like muscle memory. There cannot be any more teaching moments. This team that's been the youngest in the league for the 3rd year in a row has a lot of guys who have been here for 3 years in a row in the same situation as the 7 seed. They need to learn from it. They need to grow, and it needs to happen like yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, look, And then this is the last thing we'll say before we get to our third and final segment. The Packers aren't going to give excuses, but not having Zach Tom, Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft, Devonte Wyatt, even Elton Jenkins, that screws you. I think they're a Super Bowl team if they have those guys, but that's the nature of the NFL. 49ers don't have Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, haven't for a while, and guess what? They still have a game this weekend. So you got to find a way, and the justification even, I'm not calling it an excuse, the justification of youth, Brian Gutekunst nipped that in the bud way early in the offseason, said, sure, we may still be young, but we have enough experience and experience in the playoffs at that, where our youth is not a reason for us to falter anymore. So that's what makes some of these shortcomings and discombobulations and lack of composure, not finishing games, even more concerning. And that's that.
And I think lastly, again, you don't want to make it something that it's not. But this Packer team now has lost 3 in a row in the playoffs. They did win in Jordan Love's first start, but they've now lost 3 in a row. You got to get the taste of that victory so that you understand exactly what it takes to get there and the momentum that you can ride once you get it and how far you can actually take that until you do. I mean, this is going to be a deal, and this is going to be a deal all the way through next season. And that's why, everybody talks about wearing this and the pain and the hurt. This has got to start being applied in February, in March, in April, when they come back to do their off season and start getting ready for training camp. This needs to be worn now because it's been too much.
Several players in the locker room said we have 98 days. And I said, they've done that math? No. There was clearly a message from Matt LaFleur saying you got 98 days and then you better be back in this building ready to go. So the message is already being pushed forward. Speaking of locker cleanout day, it was a newsy locker cleanout day. Probably the best one that I've been a part of in my 7 years here. We got injury updates from Micah Parsons talk, Tucker Kraft talk, Zach Tom talk, Devonte Wyatt talk. So we're going to give you everything you need to know from a newsy locker cleanout day at Lambeau Field after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to The Tundra. Welcome back to The Tundra, episode 20. As always, this segment brought to you by the great folks at Potawatomi Sportsbook. Head to Potawatomi Casino Hotel for the big game on February 8th. Watch at the bar, attend a tailgate party, or reserve premium seating. John, you and I have both been to Potawatomi, seen all those big screens, watching games. For the big game, I don't know if there's a much better place to watch that thing.
Yeah, and I don't know where people are going to watch the big game, but they should watch the big game February 8th down at Potawatomi Sportsbook. Get an unrivaled experience at Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee. Watching the big game at 1100 Bar and Lounge, Rock and Brews Restaurant, or Small Bar. You can reserve premium seating inside Potawatomi Sportsbook. Tickets and reservations are available starting January the 8th. Plenty of food and drink specials, including $10 off that 100-ounce beer tube. Matt, how many times have you had that? Well, you should. All kinds of stuff to do down there as well. Prop bets galore, 75 different kiosks, and then some. Make your way down to Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee for the big game.
John, since we don't have a Packers game to preview this week, I'm going to pose you this question. And I'm not even going to take credit for it. Adam Gracia, our phenomenal producer most of the time, said, what are the odds? He said, use this. This is a good line. This is funny. He said, credit me definitely for this. What are the odds the Packers make it into next season healthy or make it through next season healthy? He kind of stumbled through the joke when he was giving it. That's what came out of locker cleanout day today, was a lot of injury news, a lot of rehab timelines, all that good stuff. So where we're going to start is with their best player, Micah Parsons, who spoke with reporters today for about 20 minutes for the first time since tearing his ACL about a month ago. The nuts and bolts of what he said are that he hopes to be ready by week 1. That is what he called his lofty hope. But he said more realistically, he's going to be ready by week 3 or week 4. He said he'll be ready sometime in September. He said this has been the most challenging time of his life, the first couple weeks after ACL surgery. It's just pain. He can't sleep. He said he can't put his underwear on. He can't do anything. He moves, and it's like a shrieking pain sometimes. But he said, It's going to be worth it when he gets on the other side. And I want to read you a quote from Micah Parsons, kind of forecasting his return. He said, "It's going to be crazy. I just look forward to putting on a show. There's a lot of aggression that is built up right now. There's a lot of pain that I feel like I'm suffering that other people need to feel too. And everything is leading up to that return date and getting back out there on the field."
Man, I don't miss that. I miss a lot about football, but I don't miss coming back from an injury, man. These things are tough. You got scar tissue that you got to break through. People's like, what? Yeah, you got to break through the scar tissue. You got to create flexibility where you're not flexible. I mean, the pain on the inside of your knee is excruciating. I can't remember having tears come out of my eyes while I was trying to get range of motion on training tables. So I know exactly what Micah Parsons is going through right now. And you think your mind carries yourself to so many different places that when you do get to the point where you are ready to practice again, I mean, you can't be happier to be healthy. These things happen once or twice through a player's career when they have these long, arduous recoveries. And Micah Parsons is battling through something right now, and it's not fun.
He's not the only one who's going to have to battle through a long, arduous recovery. Tucker Kraft, too, arguably their best pass catcher, who obviously tore his ACL in week 9. He said he doesn't want to get too ahead of himself, but he said some would say he's ahead of schedule. He says he feels great. Micah Parsons was on crutches today in the locker room. Tucker Kraft was walking on his own. Not that that's abnormal or anything, but Tucker Kraft said he doesn't know how much he can divulge about his recovery timetable. But he said by the time week 1 rolls around, that'll be 10 months after surgery. And he said, hopefully then he's bulletproofed, is what he said. He expects starting training camp on the PUP list, just like he did coming off that torn pec, coming into his second year in the league. But at this point in these guys' recovery, all you want to hear from them, if you're a fan or anyone inside that building, is that recovery is going smooth, no setbacks. They're going to give the cliche, we're ahead of schedule. And both of those guys, who you could argue, John Kuhn, are 2 of the Packers' 3 most important players that you can't afford losing, are on that track right now. So all signs are good signs so far for Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, and if both these guys take their rehab and take their recovery seriously, which I know they will, because I know the work ethic by these 2 guys. I know how much they love the game and how much they love the challenge of trying to come back from these injuries. I would expect them back very soon next year. I would be surprised if either of them are not, or I'd be surprised if both of them aren't back by some point in September, which would be speedy, but would be kind of in line with what Christian Watson did this year when he came back at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So keep our fingers crossed for that with those guys. But the Packers got more injuries than just the 2 of them.
Yes, and you could argue this guy is more important than Tucker Kraft. Zach Tom, their franchise right tackle, their best offensive lineman. He injured that knee in week 15. We did not know this at the time, but Tom said scans after that game, Tom said this today, revealed a partially torn patellar tendon in his knee.
Yeah,
they tried a PRP. Yeah, they tried a PRP injection in hopes that he would be able to play by week 18 or the playoffs. He obviously wouldn't have played in week 18 anyway because they rested guys. But Matt LaFleur said after that Vikings game that the non-Malik Willis and Dontavian Wicks guys, Malik had a hamstring injury, Dontavian Wicks had a concussion. He said all the other guys that they rested would have otherwise played, he believed. And then at the beginning of Bears week, he said he expected Zach Tom to play. Then he kind of backtracked later in the week. Zach Tom got a rest day that we now know probably wasn't just a rest day on Thursday before the game. And now today, Zach Tom says he's going to get surgery and he's going to be out for 6 months, which brings him back around the start of training camp. But he said the PRP injection, it just didn't get them to a point where he felt he could play. He said pass protection, he did not feel comfortable. And he said if he had to block a guy running through his chest, he would not be competitive. So that's why he didn't play against the Bears. And now he faces a long recovery and the challenge of being ready for training camp.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. The meniscus, that's very important for longevity, for your long-term health. Just being able to be a dad and walk around Disney World with your kids, those meniscus are very important. So I can understand Zach Tom's hesitancy to want to try and rush back from something like that. Aside from the pain there involved, Zach Tom had a very injury-riddled year. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talk about the oblique, then you talk about the knee, and then you talk about the back, and maybe there was a groin throw in there too. Zach Tom, not being 100%, had a major impact on this football team. I felt like the biggest part of this team that needs to be addressed going into next season is the offensive line, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Zach Tom was not available for most of the season. So getting a healthy Zach Tom back for next year would do this Packers team a lot of good.
It absolutely would. The last major guy who discussed an injury today, and that's no disrespect to guys like Bo Melton, who, when I asked him about his injury, he said it was a meniscus injury. I said, was it torn? Do you need surgery? He goes, we're still working through that, but he said it would be a 3 to 4 week injury is what he said. So that means no surgery. Obviously, the 3 to 4 weeks doesn't really matter now because they're out of the playoffs, but Devonte Wyatt's the last one. Their best interior defensive lineman went down when Warren Brinson accidentally rolled up on him in that Detroit game on Thanksgiving. I was not in the Devonte Wyatt scrum because Micah Parsons was talking at the same time, and I was in on that one. But Tom Silverstein, another one of the longtime beat writers here, I believe tweeted that Wyatt said he fractured his fibula and tore a ligament in his ankle and faces a recovery time of 3 to 5 months, he said, depending on a couple things, but he hopes to be ready by training camp as well. John, you remember after that Cowboys game, we asked Micah Parsons what happened in the second half. He said, Devonte Wyatt got hurt. Mm-hmm. Devonte Wyatt is a massive part of this team. He may not be viewed as like a marquee guy, but he's a marquee guy for this football team.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's just added up to the list of characters that unfortunately were not able to play in this story for this Packers team this year. And those are the stars, like you said. Apologies to the guys that are special teams aces that were not available for this game, and they were forced on reserves for special teams. You wonder what happens to special teams and why there can possibly be the problems that they have. Well, that's it. When you lose guys that aren't stars, and we're naming 4 guys, and then they have another 12 that are on the injury report, yeah, those guys are the guys that contribute to special teams quite a bit. The Bo Meltons of the world, the Zane Andersons of the world. Those guys matter too. And when special teams take a hit like that, this is the result. Those types of plays that we saw down there in Chicago. So the Packers' biggest enemy this year, the Packers' biggest deficiency this year was their health. It took them out from every different angle, first with Tucker Kraft, then with Micah Parsons. Christian Watson was very limited. Zach Tom not being healthy for the entire year. You can basically look at any given spot on the roster and make a claim that, injuries affected their productivity at some point in time throughout the season. So Packers need to get healthy, coming at a time when soft tissue injuries used to be the plague of the Green Bay Packers. Now it's ligaments and meniscus. So a little more serious now for this team.
And former Tundra guest David Bakhtiari tweeted out, Packers got to get their sports science figured out. I'm not saying that's a shot at the sports science department. It's just that they got to get it figured out. He said Jordan loves the future, which I agree with. I know we haven't touched on that much. We'll dive into it, at some point this offseason. Jordan loves the guy. Top 5 quarterback in the league, I think.
I didn't think there was any questions about it. That's why I didn't know we were addressing it anymore.
No, last thing before we get out of here. Keyshawn Nixon is an interesting player. We've talked a bunch about how he's polarizing. So after Keyshawn Nixon's scrum ended today, in which he said he thought he played really well this year, do I agree necessarily with that? No, but I also don't know nearly as much football as other people do. I think a lot of fans would disagree with that as well. You be the judge. That's all I'm saying. After his scrum ends, I stayed around and said, can I ask you one more thing? He goes, yeah, sure. I go, listen, number 1 cornerbacks in this league get paid a shit ton of money. And he kind of smiled and said, yeah. I said, you're making $6 million a year right now. He smiled and said, yeah. I said, are you going to ask for a new contract this offseason? He said, most likely. And then he followed that up with, we'll see. I don't know. So he kind of backtracked from the most likely. But the fact of the matter is, John, and this is according to Over the Cap, Keyshawn Nixon is the 37th highest paid corner in the league, tied for 37th highest at $6 million average annual salary. The Packers gave him that salary as a nickel corner. Whether you think he's a number one cornerback or not, based on his talent, I think he played like it first half of the season, probably not the second half. He has the right to go to the Packers, and whether it's asking for an extension or a pay raise on the last year of his contract going into next season, that's within his right. And I think from his perspective, at least, it's a reasonable ask to do that. He did emphasize to me that he wants to be in Green Bay. He said, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to be in Green Bay. So that's just another thing to watch. It kind of blew up when I tweeted that out today because a lot of people do not like Keyshawn Nixon and the way he talks. But I would not be surprised if he goes to the Packers with his agent this year and says, you got to pay me more than $6 million a year if I'm going to be the number one corner on this team.
Yeah. And with that, we'll wrap this thing up because, quite frankly, I don't know who's going to be the number one corner on Green Bay's team in 2026. There's a lot of thing up for grabs. They just brought a guy in named Trayvon Diggs who could potentially be vying for that claim, depending on how his contract gets sorted out going forward. So a lot of things up in the air. A whole lot of time before the start of this next football season. Heck, we got to get through these playoffs, and I got Aaron Rodgers to root for now that the Packers are out of this thing.
All right, then let's get you out of here. Listen, we appreciate everybody listening and watching this season. This show would be nothing without y'all. But this is not a goodbye. This is a see you next week, because guess what? Heck, we might have an emergency episode at some point later this week, depending on what happens with Matt LaFleur. This is a once a week in the off-season show. We are not going anywhere. But for now, we appreciate everyone following along this season, and we'll talk to you soon.